Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So as of today, we're just around 16 days from defaulting on our debts, which of course is going to have extremely bad consequences as far as our economy goes. And it's very possible that we could see a delay in Social Security payments. So today we have a huge meeting. It's going to be taking place at the White House. It's going to be Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the top 4 congressional leaders all in the same room, and they're going to try to work out a deal. So we're going to be talking about that. Now, in addition to that, we had one senator walking around Washington over the last week talking to different Americans about his plan to save Social Security, because as we all know, according to numerous reports, if nothing is done within the next 10 years, people who are receiving Social Security will receive a cut in their benefits by 25%. Now, before I go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. So again, we had that meeting taking place today. It's going to be at 3 p.m. This is going to be extremely crucial. So we're going to have President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and we're going to have the top 4 congressional leaders. So we're going to have Hakeem Jeffries, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, we're going to have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, all in the same room trying to strike a deal with the federal budget cuts, where we're going to cut from our budget in order to raise the debt ceiling. Now, whether or not they can actually reach an agreement, nobody really knows, but this is going to be super important for Joe Biden to at least get a little bit closer to reaching a deal, because according to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, something must get done this week. If they don't get something done this week, then they are not going to have the time to pass it through the House, pass it through the Senate, and into the White House. And then, of course, tomorrow on Wednesday, Joe Biden is supposed to be leaving to Japan for the G7 summit, so it's not necessarily going to be that great of a look if they leave the meeting today at 3 p.m. and they're not able to report back that things went all that well. I mean, how is a president supposed to go head over to Japan if things in our own country aren't really going all that well? It's not necessarily going to be the best look. And then, of course, on Thursday, the Senate is going to be leaving for Memorial Day weekend. So maybe they will stay to try to work all this out. I'm not really sure what all they're going to do. This is more coming down to, I guess, President Joe Biden and the House Speaker, whether or not they can reach a deal. But we will just have to wait and see. This is going to be huge because, once again, not only will this have severe economic consequences if we're unable to raise the debt ceiling, we're going to have millions of jobs lost. We're going to have the stock market tanking. So if you have any type of retirement account, whether it's a 401k or an IRA, you're going to see a huge loss in that account if we're unable to raise the debt ceiling. And again, it's very possible that Social Security payments could be delayed even by a day or two, which obviously is something that we cannot do. Over the years, these payments have gone out on time, the day that people are supposed to receive them. So if they're even a day late, in my opinion, that's just simply unacceptable. They need to stay in Washington, work this deal out for the American people. It is simply the right thing to do. So according to CNBC, though, Biden is optimistic about a debt limit deal, but McCarthy says White House isn't being serious. So President Joe Biden sounds optimistic about the odds of reaching a deal with Republicans to raise or suspend the debt limit in time to avoid economic fallout from even a potential U.S. debt default. He said, quote, "I really think there's a desire on their part as well as ours to reach an agreement, and I think we'll be able to do it." As to his state of mind, he said, quote, "I remain optimistic because I'm a congenital optimist." Biden's remarks followed the postponement of a White House meeting originally set for Friday with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. The White House said the 3-day delay should be viewed as a sign of progress in the talks. Quote, "The meetings have been productive over the past few days, and leaders wanted to continue before they regrouped," White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said on Friday. But not everyone involved in the talks has such a sunny outlook. Kevin McCarthy told NBC News on Monday outside the Capitol that "I still think we're far apart, and it doesn't seem to me yet that they want a deal." He said, quote, he continued on, "It seems like they want to look like they're in a meeting. They're not talking anything serious." So according to one side, according to Joe Biden, talks are moving along. They're getting closer to a deal. And Biden says that both sides want to make a deal. But then the Republican, the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, is saying, well, the White House isn't really being serious. I don't think they want to make a deal. So we have two conflicting outlooks here where Joe Biden is very optimistic. He says things are going wonderful, but Kevin McCarthy is saying things really aren't all that wonderful. And this is very concerning because, again, Kevin McCarthy said a deal needs to be done this week. It's going to take time. Once they reach a deal, they need to go through a progress to write the bill, pass it to the House, pass it to the Senate, and get it to Joe Biden's desk. And remember, in order for the House Speaker and Kevin McCarthy to become the House Speaker to get voted in, he had to give into several of the demands from his Republican colleagues. And one of those demands was once they write a piece of legislation, he needs to make sure that each member in the Republican House of Representatives is given at least 3 days to review that bill. There's no more gone are the days of putting a bill on the floor and passing it and giving people like 2 hours to read a 1,000-page bill like during Nancy Pelosi's tenure. Now, Kevin McCarthy, according to the rules that he signed on to become the House Speaker, he needs to give each member 3 days to read the entire bill, so they are not just going to sneak this bill through like we had back over the last couple of years. It's just not going to happen. So again, that June 1st deadline is coming up. Some people say, well, maybe it'll be a little bit later than that. But yesterday, we also had the Treasury Secretary and Janet Yellen reaffirming that the United States could run out of money to pay the bills by early June. So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen reaffirmed to Congress on Monday that the United States could default on its debt as early as June 1st. She said, quote, with additional information now available, I am writing to note that we still estimate that Treasury will likely no longer be able to satisfy all of the government's obligations if Congress has not acted to raise or suspend the debt limit by early June and potentially as early as June 1st. As she has in prior letters to Congress, the Treasury Secretary underscored the urgency of the situation. She said, quote, waiting until the last minute to suspend or increase the debt limit can cause serious harm to business and consumer confidence, raise short-term borrowing costs for taxpayers, and negatively impact the credit rating of the United States. In fact, we have already seen Treasury's borrowing costs increase substantially for securities maturing in early June. So obviously, they need to work out a deal. They need to act with more urgency. This deadline is coming up very quickly. We are now just 16 days away. Now, in some other news, of course, yesterday we had an article come out from Fox News saying that the Biden administration approved an additional $42 billion in student loan forgiveness under the updated PSLF program. So a lot of student debt has been forgiven now under President Joe Biden. Of course, unilaterally, nothing passed through Congress, but just through executive order. And according to this article from CNBC, the Biden administration has now canceled $66 billion in student loan debt. So a lot of student loan debt has been forgiven under President Joe Biden right now, which, great for them. If they had student loan debt, and this could help alleviate some of the stress that they have having to pay off all of these loans and make it easier for them to go out and maybe buy their first home or pay off other debts that they may have. Good for them, but I'm going to kind of bridge this with something else in just a couple of minutes, so just bear with me here. And of course, according to The Hill, we have that huge nationwide student loan forgiveness. Up to $20,000 worth of student loans will be forgiven if the Supreme Court goes ahead and gives it okay. Biden went ahead and did an executive order, several months ago at this point. This has been kind of dragging on for a long time, where it would be anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 worth of student loan forgiveness for pretty much a lot of Americans. And this was without congressional approval. So of course we had a lot of lawsuits coming through, and we can expect to hear some type of decision anywhere between May and June, according to most experts from the Supreme Court. So it's going to be very interesting. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, if this plan passes, it's going to cost taxpayers nearly $500 billion. $500 billion this is going to cost for this student loan forgiveness. And this is where I sort of want to go ahead and bridge this to another topic, because again, I think it's wonderful if I had student loans or something like that. Say I had $20,000 worth of student loans, or someone I knew had $20,000 worth of student loans and they were receiving this forgiveness. I'm sure it would help me or them out quite a bit. I mean, that would alleviate quite a bit of stress. So good for them. But obviously, you know, we spend money in different ways as a country. Some people are going to like the way that we spend the money. Some people are not going to like the way that we spend the money. For example, some people are very against the student loan forgiveness. Some people are for it. And then, of course, we're also sending billions of dollars to other countries as well. Some people may like it. Some people may hate it. But at the end of the day, we're spending all this money. But then also we have some things that we're just going, quite frankly, very cheap on. Like, for example, the Social Security program apparently is going to be going insolvent within the next 10 years. And if nothing is done about it by, let's say, like 2032 or 2033, if you're receiving Social Security, you're going to receive a benefit cut of 25%. So if you're receiving a $1,000 check, that $1,000 check on a monthly basis is going to go down to around $750. Quite frankly, that's unfair. Why are we sending money to other countries, or spending money in certain ways in some areas, but when it comes for Social Security beneficiaries, we're apparently just too cheap to make sure that the program is solvent. Now, there are a couple of different plans on the table right now to make sure that the program is solvent. Whether or not either of them actually pass, it's just going to be up to our congressional lawmakers in Washington. So one of the plans is actually a bipartisan one. It's headed by Bill Cassidy and Angus King, and he's actually been going around Washington talking to different Americans about his plan. So we're going to play a short video here in just a second, but what this plan involves is basically they're going to have like a $1.5 trillion trust fund separate from the Social Security Trust Fund. They're going to invest that money into the U.S. economy, hoping to receive a return of right around 8%, which is more money than what they receive in the Social Security Trust Fund at this point in time. And if they're able to achieve the 8% returns, they say they can take all of that money, put it into the Social Security Trust Fund, and make the program solvent for a longer period of time. So I'm going to play this clip, and then we're going to come back and talk about it.
I'm at the United States Capitol talking to Americans from across the country about Social Security. The program's going insolvent in 8 or 9 years. When that happens, benefits are cut by 24%. Boom, 24% cut. I have an idea, and I'm presenting it to these fellow Americans to see how they like it. Come along, let's see what they have to say. Now, did y'all know that the Social Security Trust Fund is going insolvent in 8 or 9 years?
We've heard a little bit about it.
A little bit. What have you heard?
Well, just that they're looking really carefully and people want to get rid of it.
Was it like a 25% cut?
So if it goes insolvent, everyone immediately gets a 24% cut.
Right.
That's remarkable.
This doesn't seem like it makes sense.
I agree with you.
Like, right?
Let me give you one last thing. We've got this big idea in which we would take some dollars, not Social Security money, set up a fund separate from Social Security, and we invest that fund in the U.S. economy.
Okay.
And as that money grows, we use it in order to help Social Security become solvent again. What would you think about a plan like that?
Well, that'd be a great idea.
Oh, I have the goosebumps.
Like, why not?
Why not?
Makes sense, doesn't it? It's probably what your private pension fund does.
I like that idea.
Do you?
I like any idea that is going to keep it from going the way it has been.
I really like that. Anything is a full benefit for the seniors. That would be great.
So obviously it's a very interesting idea. The only real problem with their whole plan is there are rumors that also in this plan they would be raising the full retirement age up to 70, at least for the younger generations, which for them I really don't think is fair, because having to wait all the way until the age of 70 to receive your full retirement benefits, especially if you have like a heavy labor job, if you work in a factory or something like that, you might have bad knees or bad back or something like that. And having to wait all the way to 70 to receive your full benefit just won't be too fair and won't be too popular. So if they do have that, I don't think it'll pass. I don't think Democrats will allow that to pass, and maybe some Republicans as well. Hopefully, I'm very against the idea of raising it to 70 from 67. Just wouldn't be fair, at least to me. And then of course we have another plan. This one is actually in the form of a bill. It's currently both in the House and in the Senate. It's really Bernie Sanders' idea. And in Bernie Sanders' plan, they would actually raise benefits for everyone by $200 per month. They would lift the special minimum benefit to 125% of the federal poverty line. They would change the way that the cost of living adjustments are calculated over to the CPIE method. And this bill just does a whole lot. I'm not going to go over everything in this bill that's in this bill in this video, because I have talked about it in other videos. But they would basically do all these benefit increases by lifting taxes on Americans earning above $250,000 per year. So that's pretty much the way they would fund these increases. It would make the Social Security Trust Fund solvent close to around the 2100 year mark. The problem with this bill, of course, is that Republicans are very much against lifting taxes, even those on the wealthy. So more than likely, this bill is probably going to have a struggle passing as well, unless they can get at least some Republicans on board with this bill, or the Democrats can take a supermajority in the Senate while having at least a slim majority in the House. But that's all the news that we have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video.